Today is May 1st, 2007. We're here at the Atlanta History Center, and with us today is Mrs. Eloise Belle Isle, who will tell us a little bit about her experiences, specifically during World War II, but in the Atlanta area in general. Eloise, could you tell me the date of your birth and where you were born?
February the 3rd, 1922.
And where do you live now?
Beg your pardon?
Where do you live now?
I live now in Mora, Georgia.
In Mora, Georgia? Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your life from the time you were born up until the beginning of World War II?
Well, I was born in Commerce, Georgia. And my parents lived with my grandparents and took care of them until I was 9 years old. And then we moved to Perry, Georgia. And I went to school down there until November before I graduated in May. And I just think that was terrible because I had leave my classmates. But we moved to Social Circle, Georgia, and I graduated from there. And after I graduated, I went to Drone School of Commerce in Atlanta, and I rode the bus every morning. The bus left the train depot at 6 o'clock in the morning, and at 6 o'clock at night it left Atlanta going back home. So that was how I did my education, and I did a lot of my homework in the bus station because I'd had a time after I got out of school to go do that, so I would do my homework then. And then after I graduated, I went to work for Yellow Cab Company, and I was making $16.25 a week. And it wasn't a tiring, a very rewarding job. I mostly sat and gave them purchase orders when they needed parts for cars. And then I got a chance to work at some lawyers. I had 4 lawyers that I worked for, and I worked for them for a while. I graduated from high school in 1939. And, but anyway, I worked for lawyers for a while, and then I got a chance to go to work for the government. And when I was working for lawyers, I was probably making about $28 a week. And then when I went to work for the government, I was making $120 a month. Man, I was really in high cotton. I thought I had conquered the world. And when I went to work for them, the buildings were at Candler Warehouse out in West End. Candler Warehouse was a cotton warehouse. And so they had several buildings around, and we were in Building L. And we worked in transportation. And Lieutenant Leach was our lieutenant that was with our office, and Mr. Niebrigge was our civilian over the office. And we had different departments in there, but I was transportation. And what we did, we received the vehicles in, and then we tallied them out. And then another group, when the vehicles came in, they made little cards for them, and they kept a file on all those cards. And so when we loaded them up to ship them out, then that was when we did our tallies to tally them out. And we had a great time there. We had a lot of good people. In my department, we had a boss, and there were 5 girls. And one of the funny things happened one day. Our boss came back to the desk, and his phone was jumping up and down like this, and he couldn't find his girls. Nobody was there. And they said, "Where are my girls?" And they said, "They're in the bathroom taking exercise." So from then on, we went to the bathroom one at a time. we thought that was terrible. We tried to sneak out, but we couldn't do that either. And we were there until they built the Atlanta Army Depot. And when they built the depot, we moved to out there to Forest Park, where now it's Fort Gillum, but then it was Atlanta Army Depot, then it was Atlanta General Depot, and then it had several other names which I don't remember. But I worked there when it was the Atlanta Army Depot, and I was still working in transportation. And we had several people that worked out in the field and did the checking the trucks in and the equipment in and checking it out. And we received it, and then we shipped it out. And we didn't have a restaurant over on our side. We were on the Forest Park side, and the other side is the 42 highway side. It went from 54 highway to 42 highway, and we were on the Forest Park side. And we went over to the administration building. They had a cafeteria over there, and we would go there for our lunch. And they had a little store in there, and sometimes we could buy candy. Sometimes they didn't have any, because it was very rare then to have candy and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun. The bus took us back and forth, and we had when we were out there, we had the department that did that, checking them in and out on the little cards. And one day we decided we had too many record keeping places, so they were gonna, they called headquarters or whatever and asked them if we could get rid of some of this work, not have to do this instead of do. And they said if we made copies of all of it, we could. So we decided it wasn't worth it, so we just keep on doing it like we were doing it. But we've had a really good time working there.
When did you begin working? This is for the federal government. Was that
It was
before
1941.
1940?
1941. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that where I was when war was declared.
Okay.
I was in Commerce, Georgia, visiting my grandparents, and that afternoon we heard it. Somebody called us. They had heard it on the radio, and they called us, and then, of course, you know what happened next. And I had a cousin, several cousins that went in the service. I don't remember all of them that went in, but and what rank of service they went in. But I know several of my cousins went in, and I had a girl cousin that joined the army, and she was in it, and she liked being in the army. That was her cup of tea for a while. And but back to the depot, we saw the soldiers out there a lot, and we weren't really involved in things that they did, as we were more or less what we did.
When you say you would bring the vehicles in, are they vehicles that were just manufactured that would be brought into the depot and then shipped out to various fronts?
I'm not sure that they were brought in from so I don't know exactly where they were coming from, but they came to us, and we were more or less the stopping place to get to be delivered somewhere else, and they would ship them in to us, and all the army vehicles, and we had all kinds. And they would be shipped in to us, and then we would hold them until somebody needed them at another place, and then that's when we would ship them out.
I guess after December 7th, I guess the tempo increased at the depot.
Yeah.
After the war began.
Yeah.
A lot more.
If everybody was making, seemed like some of these things came from Alabama, but I'm not positive on that. I'm not positive on that. I just know that we just got in lots and lots of different kind of vehicles. It wasn't just one kind, it was several kinds that we got in, and we shipped them all out. They all came in by train, and so we were responsible for all of that.
Did you ship, were some of those vehicles shipped overseas?
Oh yeah, okay. A lot of them were shipped overseas. A lot of them were shipped overseas. Well, in fact, I imagine that just about all we had was shipped overseas, because we didn't need them too much here except for a little training, and we sent them overseas.
Before December 7th, was there any expectation within the depot that the United States would go to war?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think we really thought that we were going to go to war. I just think that, you know, we're living on cloud nine and we don't think about this. We didn't think about stuff like that. And I don't remember, but when I know when it was declared, we were really, really surprised. I mean, when Pearl Harbor, I tell you, that was just terrible, just terrible.
What was life like here in the Atlanta area during the war?
During the war, okay, a lot of people worked for the government. I personally lived in a boarding house with a lot of other people that worked for the government, and we had soldiers that lived in the boarding house too. And it was during that time. I don't remember the place that was out at Chambly. I want to say Fort Gordon, but I know that's not right. But they had a hospital out there, and my roommate and I would go out there to see those boys a lot, just for, you know, to let them know we cared. And we went out there and quite a bit, and we went to the USO, and of course things were rationed. You could only have so much gas, and what you did was I carpooled this guy, one of the guys that worked at the plant. I carpooled with him, and he would pick me up. He lived on 14th Street, and I lived on 1485 Peach Street, and he'd come pick me up, and then we picked up somebody out that would meet us at Edgewood Avenue, going out to the depot to work. And we had somebody else, a couple others, but everybody just about had a carpool.
Did you get gas ration tickets and give them to the person who was driving?
I didn't get any gas rations because I didn't have a car.
Okay, so you had to have a car.
You had to have a car to get gas ration. But we had rations for clothes. We had rations, tickets for groceries, and when during the war, when we the only meat you could get was lamb, and I swore if I ever got way I could buy something besides lamb, I would never cook another piece of lamb. And I've only cooked it when my husband had to eat it because he had ulcers. But if you had food stamps, I never forget a pair of shoes I bought. I think they were made with wood. They were pretty shoes, but they were so hard, and I couldn't wear those shoes after I bought them. And of course, I was stuck with them because you couldn't take them back, and so. But you were very limited in what you had. And in fact, I still have some of my stamps at home that we had during wartime. But we managed to get by on what we had, and of course, a lot of the farmers could raise their food, but we couldn't do that because we lived in Atlanta. And I lived in a boarding house the time that I worked for the government. And then when I started dating my boss and I were dating, and we didn't think it was kosher for us to work in the same department. It's okay. And so I had to quit, and you couldn't quit the government unless you had a health excuse. So I lied, and there was something wrong with me, and so I had to quit. But then you couldn't get a job for so long after you quit. If you quit working for the government, you couldn't go right to another job. You had to wait. And I don't remember how long it was that I waited. But my husband was still working for the depot, and I went back to school and brushed up on my accounting degree. And then I worked for Frost Motors next to the doctor's building in downtown Atlanta. And then after my first child was born, I didn't work anymore. I stayed home. And my husband still worked for the government until 1954. He left the government, but he had worked. He went to work, I think, about the time that depot at the thing was when they opened up kind of the warehouse. And back then, though, $120 a month was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
a lot.
When was your first child born?
My first child was born in 46.
Okay.
We married in 45 and she was born in 46. But he had a child from a previous marriage. And he was almost 4 years old when we married. And then I had 5 children. So we had 6 children in all.
Okay.
And they all did well.
That's good. So you were not working for the government at the time the war ended?
No, I was not working for the government when the war ended. I was working for Frost Motors, and my husband was still working for the government.
Tell us a little bit about that experience when the war ended and your
Oh
reaction.
man, everybody went crazy. Everybody went crazy because it was over, and we could, do something else beside that. It was just people running up and down Peachtree Street you wouldn't believe, and it was it's just hard to describe what really happened because it was such a great event that this war was over and we didn't have to fight the war and our boys didn't have to go and we didn't have to lose anymore. But let me tell you this, I got to go to Belgium with the Friendship Force a few years back, and we went to a couple of cemeteries over there. And if you don't think that don't break your heart, it was, just look out there and as far as you can see are monuments. I mean, precise, in a row. It just eats your heart out.
Were any of your friends lost in the war?
And my friend,
Yeah, or family?
yeah, did you say pass away or something?
Yes.
I had a cousin that passed away. He was over there. He passed away during the war.
Okay.
And he lived at Commerce, Georgia. He was my daddy's brother's son. And that's the only one that we lost in the service. But I had, like I said, I had several, that went, but that was the only one that we lost.
Well, when did you marry your husband? It was during the war.
In 1945, in July the 1st, 1945.
So right at the end of the war.
Yeah, right at the end of the war, and right after that it ended, and it was just a different world,
Well, tell us a little bit about the world after the war and your experiences.
And after the war,
Yeah.
well, after the war, I guess we begun to, well, when we got married, we couldn't find an apartment to live in, so we lived in a boarding house. And when my husband's brother came back from the service, he could get an apartment because he was Army, and he could get an apartment. If you were a veteran, you could get an apartment. But if you weren't, you were just out of luck. And back then, they took a lot of old houses and made apartments out of them. And we lived, so when he came back, and after he'd been back for a while and got an apartment, it was a one-room apartment. We went in, we opened the door, and here was just a tiny little hall, and this was one big room. I guess it was about 18 or 20 feet this way, and about 10 or 12 this way. We had a little kitchen, and you had a refrigerator, a stove, a sink, and a stove. That fit in that little bit of space. And we had to eat off of a card table because the kitchen wouldn't hold a table. So we would eat off the card table and fold in chairs, and when we got through, we folded it all up, put it in the closet. And then we had a bathroom. We took two little steps down to the bathroom, had a small bathroom, and we had a back porch. But the porch wasn't much good because back then people used coal. And the smoke, we gave a lot of soot to put on there, and so we it was either keep it cleaned off every day or just forget about it. So most of the time we just forgot about it. But we lived in a warehousing apartment building, and we had several families that lived there. One of the families that lived there worked at the depot. And my husband, swapped about driving, and but then we were going to buy a car, and we had a car, but we had to give them our car when we ordered the car. And we were without a car for a long time. We had to wait till it was built and sent in. But we had to give up our car.
Was that standard at the time?
That was the standard at the time. You had to give up your car. This was after the war. This was in 45. We gave up our car. And we thought we could just get one right soon, but it was a while before. So we rode a streetcar for a long time.
Yeah.
And my husband carpooled with this other guy that lived in the apartment. And I think they said there was 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there were about 6 apartments in that one house. And also in when I first came to Atlanta, I lived in a house that was a war house, and it had about 5 or 6 apartments in it. And then we decided we were tired of keeping up an apartment, so excuse me, we moved to a boarding house, and we stayed in the boarding house a while. But things were so different back then, and yet maybe they weren't so different from what they are now. It was just a different time. You could go out and buy a loaf of bread for a nickel, and you can't do that anymore. And people that make money this day and time, it almost blows your mind, because you never heard of money like that.
Right.
And you wonder what they do with it. It makes all these millions, you wonder what it's like to have something like that. I think I would rather live like I have lived, and know the hardships. And when we came up, before the war, I was born in 22, and times were hard. And everybody was poor, and nobody knew they were poor. So that was a different thing. Everybody was. And you didn't think about being poor. I wasn't poor till somebody told me I was. And I thought, I'm not poor.
Don't have a lot of money.
The reason she said something to me, she says, you wear the same dress to school every day. And that was the truth. I remember that dress, and I wore it every day, and Mama washed it on the weekends, and I put it back on Monday morning. And had a lot of hand-me-downs, and it was just a different time. People shared a lot more than they do now.
Yeah.
I don't say we thought about our neighbors as much back then, but I think sometimes we did, because we knew who our neighbors were down the road. And now you don't know who lives next door to you.
When the war was over and you had your children, how did your life change? I mean, the world was changing, as you said,
Yeah.
and Atlanta too started to change.
I don't know that I could say that my life changed. I could just have a few more things than what I had. And my husband worked at the depot, and we wanted to get close to the depot. And so one afternoon, we had 4 children then. We had one that was born in May, and so this was August of 49. We were looking for some property, or a house, a lot to build a house on. And so we were riding around one Sunday afternoon, and we found this place that was real pretty. It had some trees back here, and 2 great big old trees. And my husband said, oh, that's such a pretty little lot. And I said, well, you're not putting me out in the country like this, because I was living in Atlanta, and I didn't want to be in the country. So we rode around a while, and we found this lot. They were starting, it's the first subdivision in Clayton County. And it was between 42 and 54 highway. So we went over and we talked to the guy, and we picked out a lot we wanted. It was 150 by 70, 150 by 70 or 75, 70 I think. And so we asked him how much he wanted for it, and he said $200. We had $50 in the savings account. They wanted $50 down and like $10 or $15 a month. Well, we had the $50, but we couldn't pay the 10 or 15 because we didn't have that much money, and we owed some bills. So the guy says, well, I tell you what. He said, you give me the $50, and then when you get your bills, he said, pay me a little bit, $5 will be fine, and then when you get your bills paid, pay me 10 or 15, whichever. So that's what we did. Do you think anybody would do you that way this day and time?
I was just going to ask you that question. Do you think anybody would do that?
Nobody
today?
would do that this day and time. But that's how we got our house and our property. But then, you want me to tell about that?
Sure. Yeah.
So we had, so he came home one day, and after we'd had the lot about 2 or 3 months, and he said, I had the bulldozer come out today. Because we didn't have very much money. With that many kids and everything, we just didn't have that much money. So he said, I had it bulldozed out. I said, oh, you did? And he said, yes. So we went down to see it, and I thought it would be like this. And when I got down there, it was like this and like this and like this. And I said, is he through? And my husband said, yeah, he's through. I said, what are we going to do with all that dirt? He says, we're going to move it. So we moved, he moved dirt and hauled dirt, and I helped. And we squared that basement out. We bought this in '49. In 1951, July 31st, we poured our first footing. We had moved all that dirt and got it all squared out. And I mixed all the concrete for the floor and the mortar for the blocks, and he would smooth out the concrete while I mixed it. I had an electric mixer, and so that's how we got a house, because we couldn't afford to buy one, so we brought ours out of the ground. And then when we put it like a slant roof, I call it a chicken house roof on it, and then he quit the government in 1955, and he got some pay. I've forgotten what you call that when you left. There's something to see.
Severance pay?
Yes, severance pay. He got $2,700. So that was almost enough to go up, to build the upstairs part. So in 1957, between 55 and 57, we did a little bit. We had somebody to come in and put the frame it up, just frame it, put the 2x4s up, and then we put the outside on. We put all the it was wood construction, so we put all the siding on, and put all the windows in, and then. In 57, he was working ungodly hours at his new job, and he just didn't have time to do it. So we hired somebody to come in and finish our house. We've got hardwood floors, plastered walls, a furnace, and we didn't have air conditioning then, because back then you didn't think about air conditioning. And you see, hardwood floors and anyway, pretty cabinets in the kitchen and everything, and for $5,000.
That's amazing. Sounds like a solid house.
I don't guess we've got much over $10,000 in the whole house.
Well, how old, when you finished the house, how old were your children?
Well, let's see, in 57, one of them was 11, the other one was 9, and the other one was 10, and then we skipped 4 years. And we had 2 children after we moved down there. Let's see, Hal David was born in 54. He was 3, and the baby was about a year and a half. And when we moved in that house, I just thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I had a house, because we lived in the basement for 6.5 years. And the first year we were there, somebody gave us a wood stove, and a man we knew had a filling station up on the road on 42 that we traded with, and he said, y'all come over my house, over at my lot, and buy woods and get all the wood you want. Well, my husband would go cut wood on weekends, and then at night he'd cut the wood up to go in the stove, and because it was green wood and it wouldn't burn good, and so we like to froze to death that year and didn't know it. And we didn't have running water, but my neighbor had a well that they had dug, but you couldn't drink the water. and the subdivision had a pump house. So I would take my gallon jugs and go down to the pump house to get water to cook with and drink. And my husband was a guy that could do anything. He was a jack of all trades. And he went over, he asked my neighbor about the well they had. Could we pipe some water in there to our house to use for washing and so forth? And he said, yeah. So we had a 50-gallon drum over there, and my husband would go over there and draw water and fill it up. And then when I was going to wash clothes, I had a ringer washer, and I would fill up my washing machine and get my rinse water ready. And while I'm over here drawing water, he's over there drawing it up and filling up that 55-gallon drum. Of course, if it got cold,
Just see what happened there. Just right out. Just okay.
and when the weather got cold, it would freeze, so we couldn't do anything. You didn't have any water to do that. But we hold our water, get gallon jugs of water, and to use from the pump house down at the lake. It was good, so we could use that. And we lived very primitive. We didn't know how cold we were. So the next year, we found a floor furnace and sat it on the concrete, like this. And we stayed warm. It was so nice. So we had propane gas.
Well, where did your children go to school?
Where did my children go to school?
Was it close to was it close to where you lived?
Yeah, it was about a mile and a half.
Okay.
They went to East Clayton Elementary School, and then when they graduated from there, they went to Jonesboro. And all of my children graduated at Jonesboro except my baby, Teresa. She graduated from Morrill. They had built a new high school right close by, about 2 or 3 miles from us. And so she was the first graduate of there. And my oldest daughter, Madeline, was the first one that graduated from the new Jonesboro High School in 1964.
Well, what year was your house completed? Finished in
It was completed in 1957.
1957.
Mhm.
Okay.
And we still got it. I'm still living in it. And but let me tell you this about my husband. I tell you, he's jack of all trades. We had a little porch on the back of our house, a joust in porch, and it was 13 and a half this way. No, 13 and a half this way and 8 and a half this way. So I wanted a gazebo because I wanted to put a Christmas tree out there at Christmas time and have a pretty Christmas tree. So one day he told me, he said, I think you would enjoy a room built on this house more than you would a gazebo. He's 75 years old. And I said, if he starts that room and dies, nobody can finish that house like that room like he wants. So I talked to my daughter about it, and she said, Mama, let him do what he wants to do. So I said, okay. So at 75 years old, he built us a room that is, instead of 8 and a half this way, it's 20 feet this way. And of course, it's still 13 and a half. He took this wall that's here down, and he put it back here. And he built that room. He found the same kind of hardwood floor that was in there. He found the walls were wood, and he found the same kind of paneling for the walls and the same kind of wood for the ceiling.
Sounds like a labor of love.
He built that room. And when he first built it, I just loved it. I thought it was nice, but I didn't think that much about it. But then I started sitting out there, and I just loved that room. It's one of my favorite rooms now.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's a good story. You were mentioning before we officially began the interview about some of your experiences with carrying the torch and things like that. We've got about 20 minutes left. Can you just tell us, some of the other events and things like that in your life that were important to you? Some of the events?
Some events in my life that were important. But I think the most awesome thing I did was carry the torch. That was the most awesome. And I think with my children that I was very fortunate. We were very fortunate. Nothing was wrong with any of our children. That they all were smart. They were all good children. Of course, they were trained to be good. Um, that is one thing. And I think I have gotten to travel a lot since I retired. I worked for after I worked for Frost Motors and my first child was born. I didn't work, and I went to work when my daughter was my baby daughter was a senior in high school. I went back to work and I worked it was Continental Forest Industries in Lithonia at that time. Then it became Continental Fiberdrome, and then it came something else, and then it ended up Sunoco Bottle. And I worked for them for 14 years. And when I decided at 65 that I wanted to quit, and I wanted to have some fun, I wanted to see the world. So I traveled. My husband didn't like to travel, so I told him, I said, well, if you don't like to go, I said, I'm going. So he didn't mind me going, and I have, I think there's 4 states in the United States I have not been in. I have been to Canada, I've been to Nova Scotia, I've been to Hawaii twice, I've been to Alaska. Now that was an awesome trip. Alaska is just a beautiful place. And we went all the way to Point Barrow. And you know, that's the furthest you can go. And how those people live up there in all this cold, I don't know.
Well, how did you fly up to Alaska?
I flew. And we flew into, we went with a tour company from Charlotte, North Carolina, up in that area. And so we went to Charlotte and we flew to Chicago and then on to Anchorage. We flew into Anchorage. And then when we came back to Vancouver, and we caught the plane there in Seattle to come back home.
Did you go with friends, or was it a church group, or?
No, it was just a tour group.
Okay.
It's just a tour group.
But did someone go with you? I mean, or did you just go along?
I had a roommate. Yeah,
Okay.
my roommate my cousin wanted to go to Hawaii, and Belle Isle and I had been to Hawaii in 70, yeah, we've been married 25 years, and we went to Hawaii. And so she wanted to go, and I said, if you'll go to Alaska with me, I said, I'll go to Hawaii with you. And she said, well, we'll go to Hawaii first. I said, no, we won't. We're going to Alaska first. So we went to Alaska, and then 2 or 3 years later, we went back to Hawaii. So I couldn't believe how commercial it was from the time we had been there 25 years ago. But both trips were great. Both those trips were great.
Well, in your travel within the United States, the 48.
The tour groups.
Oh, tour groups.
Tour
Okay.
groups.
Okay.
And most of the time it was tour groups. But my sister-in-law liked to travel. And you remember when Delta had, you buy coupon books, you know, and you could buy so many trips and you could go at certain. Well, we flew into Portland, Oregon. And we went down the coast to San Francisco. That was an awesome thing too. That was one of the most beautiful trips. Then we came over to Reno and Virginia City, and then went back into Portland to catch our plane going back, because you had to start and leave from the same point. But going back from around Reno and that section of the country, we went to we went to Las Vegas. We went to Las Vegas too, and we went to through this little town. We spent the night, and we asked this lady, where was a good place to eat, and she said, there was a hotel over here, and I mean, this place is just out in the middle of nowhere. They were having the senior prom that night. So she says, oh, you'll get to see the people wearing their pretty prom clothes. Where they got those, I don't know, but they were gorgeous. But we had a 7-course dinner at that hotel that night. Very good food. I mean, it was delicious. And then we took she and I took another trip. We flew into Phoenix, and we went to the Grand Canyon. And I just think that's an awesome thing too. That is awesome.
When was your last trip? Have you traveled recently?
I haven't been able to travel since I had my heart attack because
Okay.
I'm afraid to get too far from home, and if I'm going, it's to my daughter's house or somewhere that it's just family stuff. Like my granddaughter got married last year, and I went up there, but my daughter carried me, and I can't travel like I don't trust it. I just don't feel comfortable. But the last trip I made was up to the New England states to Nova Scotia and back down. And I think I've made about 3 or 4 trips up there in the fall because it is so pretty. So pretty.
You mentioned earlier that you had been to Belgium. Had you done any more traveling in Europe?
Yes. One of my friends at church one Sunday said she would like to go to England. And I said, well, I would too. And I got home and I said, would you really like to go to England? And she said, yeah. I said, with me? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, I'll get us a trip now. Will you go? And she said, yes. So she and I went to Great Britain. We went to England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. And I'd go back to Ireland and stay a week anytime because it was so pretty. All of that was pretty. We enjoyed that. We saw a lot of cathedrals, and driving through the country of Ireland was just beautiful. And that's the only 2 times that I've been overseas. And but both of those trips were just great. I went with the Friendship Force, and we stayed at the hotel, a few days, and then we lived with the family. And when we lived with this family in Belgium, we stayed there for a week. But her husband was a schoolmaster. He taught school, and she was just a housewife. He couldn't speak a word of English, and she was very fluent in English. So we talked to her most of the time. And they took us to Holland, and they took us to one of the cemeteries over there, and they took us to several places around. I can't think of the town we've stayed in. Belgium.
That's okay. Can you talk a little bit about the Friendship Force?
The Friendship Force was started by during President Carter's administration, and he was just getting countries together, and the people come, and I have helped them host some people from Japan at one time, and some from Australia, and some other places. But the Belgium trip was the only one that I took with them. No, it wasn't. It was somewhere in the United States. Oh, we went to Montana. We went to Montana, and I stayed with a couple up there for a week. That was good too. But it was started during President Carter's administration to get people friendly with the different nations, and I don't know how many trips and stuff. And then I got out of it because our chapter just kind of died out, how it does. And I met some people, saw some of the people the other day that were in it, and it's still in the Friendship Force, and they told me to come on, and I thought, well, I can't do that. And I just don't think my health is good enough to do that. I do the things that I do, I know I can handle, but I don't want to get something I can't handle. So that's the reason I haven't gone back to the Friendship Force. But I think it's a great thing because we met some great people, and from all countries, and when you have these gatherings, I met some people from Arizona that were just fantastic, and we met them, and one of them was named something. She says, when you think of me, you think of the cow, and another one said, you think of the goat when you think of me. Their names were somewhere in that area. But it was just great people.
That's great people. Could you tell us a little bit about the story of the torch and how you got involved with carrying the torch for the Olympic celebration?
My granddaughter was in the Eckerd's drugstore one Sunday afternoon, and she saw this display if anybody wanted to carry the torch to fill out the form. So she filled out the form, and then she called me and told me that she had filled out this form for me to carry a torch. And she said, now, Mother, when you get it, you send it back quick because you don't have much time. And so I said, okay. So I got some information, and I filled it all this information out and sent it back to them. And finally, this was in January. And finally, I think about March, they sent me another thing and said that I had been selected, but that didn't mean that I was going to carry the torch. It just meant that I was going to be selected, and I had to fill out some more forms and send in some more forms. And so then, when about a month, I got a letter back saying that I was going to carry the torch and that I would be getting some information. So I got that, and I was just all excited, and I was jumping up and down in the house. And then I called my granddaughter, who had gotten me to carry the torch, and she wasn't home. And I left her a message. I said, Ellen, this is your mom. I'm going to carry the torch. She said, wait a minute. She was studying, and she didn't want to be disturbed. So I told her I had been selected to carry the torch, and I was going to carry it. And they told us when we'd be doing it. And then we got a letter, and we met down at Hurt Park in Atlanta. And Evander Holyfield was there, and he had carried the torch. So he was telling us how we were supposed to hold it, And that was a good day. We got our T-shirt, and that was exciting. And then he showed us how to light the torch and how to carry it and everything. Well, they had told us that the ones that they had in '96 were heavy. So from the time I knew I was going to carry the torch, my friend had some 1 pound weights, and you could make them 2 pound. So I got used to the 1 pound. I worked at the mall at South Lake, so I would walk around the mall with this thing hanging up in the air, so I could see if I could carry the torch. And then when I got to the 2 pound, I did that too, and I walked around the mall until I could carry it. And then when I got it, it was real light, but I sure was glad I'd practiced like that. But that was a lot of fun working up to it. And then my family came in one of my daughters and her family lives in Florida, and they all came in, and we just made a party out of it. We just had a great time, and some of my other grandchildren were here.
And where did you carry it?
I carried the torch from 5th Street to the Fox Theater on Peachtree Street. I just thought that was fantastic because I got Peachtree Street.
Well, that's great. Shoot, I was going to ask you a question. I forgot what it was. So you're still living in the house that you built?
I'm still living in the house that we built.
Well, how has the area around that house changed since? How has the area around there changed?
How did the house look before then?
No, the area around.
Oh, the area. Oh, you don't want to know that. The area has, over the years, like everything else, it goes down. And it's getting better. They're building about a half a mile from me. They're building some townhouses. And some of the neighbors didn't take care of their property like we did. And we've got some neighbors out there that still live there that have been there a long time, and they take good care of their property. And some of them don't. And people ask me, if I'm not, am I not scared to live where I live? I'm not scared. I've been there since 1951. And everything's always been okay. I don't say it can't be the other way, but I feel comfortable there, and I know what the noises are.
Well, that's good.
And I'm happy there, so what else do I need?
We have a few minutes left. Can you? Is there anything in particular that you'd like to talk about, your children or anything?
Well, I'll just tell you about my children. My oldest son lives in Springfield, Missouri, and I'll just tell you what that falls. And he has a BS in business, and he worked for the government for a long time, the GA. And my oldest daughter is a nurse. She has a master's in nursing, and she taught herself critical care, and she's working. And my son was 32, and he went to college, and he studied girls. So he didn't last but 2 quarters. I told him I didn't send him to college to study girls. So anyway, he ended up doing odd jobs here and there, and he was happy. So his philosophy of life, if he had to go from A to B, he had time to stop and see somebody on the way. I wish mine was like that. He had such a great philosophy. And then my second daughter has an associate degree from Clayton State, and she is a secretary at J.W. Arnold School in Jonesboro. And my son my next son, Hal David, works for Howard Hughes Medical Institute. He went to the University of Georgia and graduated and got a grant to go to Charlottesville, University of Virginia at Charlottesville, and he got his master's and doctorate at the same time. So he has a doctorate in microbiology. And my youngest daughter has a BS in nursing, and she's a nurse, and she works in St. Francis Hospital in Columbus. So you see, my children are scattered,
Yeah.
and my grandchildren are just as scattered. But I love them all, and I'm so proud of all of them, and I think this was a great opportunity to do this. And on my way up here, I thought, what am I going to say?
It comes
you
easy
just have
once
to
you
say hello to me, and I can talk.
Well, your story. We have just a few minutes left. I mean, your story is an interesting story, and it's not an easy story. Given everything that you've been through, what would you say your philosophy of life has been?
I'll say enjoy life while you can. If you get down, don't stay that way. Get up and move. And when you retire, don't get a rocking chair. Get out and do things. Travel. Do volunteer work. There's lots and lots of things to do in volunteer work. Did I tell where I volunteered?
Not
I volunteered at Spivey Hall at Clayton State. This is a music hall. I work at the tourist center in Moore. We have a beautiful tourist center down there, and I work down there. And I also, my pet is, I work at Eggleston Hospital for Children. I work in the gift shop, and I've been there almost 20 years. And I just think that is the most rewarding thing, to be able to go up there and do something for these children and the parents and grandparents that come in. And it is a great opportunity for anybody that would like to volunteer. And I just say keep moving. Just keep moving.
Well, we want to thank you for the privilege of having you tell us your story. It's been very interesting. Is there any final comments you'd like to make?
I just want to thank y'all for inviting me up. I just think this was just fantastic.
Well, it's been our
Now,
pleasure.
see, this is one of the things that keep you young.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.